Hello, and welcome to Handled-ish, Productivity for the Imperfect, a weekly podcast for those who want to elevate their productivity but are not looking for perfection. I'm your host, Betsy Hayes, and I'm so happy you're here with us in podcast land or on YouTube. And I'm so happy to have back author and freelance marketing professional, Alyssa Jarrett. And for those of you who listened last week, we talked a lot about Alyssa's world as a romance novelist, including her debut novel, which came out last week. Hopefully you've already read it or in the process. And I really wanted to have Alyssa come back and talk about the world of being a freelance person. She's a freelance marketing professional, but the freelance world is something that a lot of us find ourselves in. So we want to talk about that. So first of all, Alyssa, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be here again.
And next, kind of share with us, your path from being a full-time, corporate marketer to a freelance professional. Because I don't know about listeners, I'm sure that they are like me, that they always love to be like, well, how'd you get here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes it feels like it sort of happened to me. Where I've been in the tech industry for over a decade. I like to say I girl boss too close to the sun. I climbed that corporate ladder as fast as humanly possible because I was eager to rack up accomplishment and achievement, right? I'm like a perfectionist sponge. If there's a goal, I will hit it and then I'll wonder, okay, now what? And then I'll do that too. So about 2 years ago, I was a VP of marketing at a early stage startup. And it really wasn't the right environment for me. I was easily working, 12-hour days, week after week. I was, a marketer of, marketing team of one. I was working on hiring a team and getting the entire function established. And so there was just a lot of work to undertake. It really caught me off guard and really sent me into this mental health spiral. And around the new year of 2022, I just had kind of come out of Christmas break. I finally had a breath to take, and I thought, I can't keep going like this. Like, I'm gonna run myself into an early grave. So I put in my notice and I said, I'm gonna take a sabbatical. Right? I was fortunate enough to have had quite a bit of savings. I also had worked at an earlier startup that I was able to sell off some stock options. And so I had given myself a breather. I said, well, for this year, I'm just going to recover. I'm going to rejuvenate. I'm going to figure out what I want to do. And because I, had written one novel at that point and was in the process of writing my second, I really wanted to make that the focus so I could sort of refill my creative cup. And so it started off as a sabbatical. And then I would say, for the first half of the year, that's really all I really did was, well, first month I did absolutely nothing. I turned my brain off. I watched Gossip Girl. I did puzzles. I needed to get over the burnout. And so again, if you're sitting here going, must be nice, absolutely, I get it. I also gave myself a ton of side eye, but we can talk about whether a decision like that is right for you. And eventually, after that point, I started to get some interest from some folks who wanted to hire me as a freelancer. And I started, sort of taking on a little bit of work. I didn't do a whole lot first year, just kind of getting my toes wet and establishing to balance both the writing and scene. And then, it was really in 2023 that I thought, okay, well, this is actually going pretty well for me. I don't necessarily want to go back to a full-time job quite yet. Can I ramp up this consulting business and take on more work so I can, so I can do my writing, and have more time for that. So I did, and I've been consulting ever since. conscious of not wanting to repeat past mistakes and get myself right back where I started from. But instead, I would be taking on even more of a burden because I didn't have healthcare and a lot of the safety nets that a full-time job does. So if I was going to take, freelancing for flexibility, I needed to be conscious of like actually having flexibility.
Mhm. Oh my goodness. Yes, yes. And so let's maybe, you had shared with me earlier before we started recording about you had a really good conversation with your editor about the, should you quit? Is this the right time? What are the things you might want to think about? And maybe if you could share a little bit about that, because I do think that's something that, a lot of people find themselves in that situation, or at least want to go through that thought exercise. And then we'll get into the, how do you do it?
Yeah. And even though that I came from a extremely lucky position, I still sat there for months going, I don't know, should I quit? Like, I was talking to my husband, my friends, my therapists, and sort of kind of ruminating on this. And my editor had sent me one of the newsletters from Jamie Attenberg, who runs the Craft Talk, and it was kind of like a little motivational speech / list of like, should you quit your day job to write? And it had a bunch of ifs, and it was like, if quitting would not financially decimate you, if you've already, if you have an idea for a book and have already started writing it and know where you want to go, and have all of the work plotted out, if you have the diligence to sit there, day after day and write, regardless of how you feel, and if you give yourself deadlines, if you can say yes to all these ifs, then sure, why not try it? Like, it's not going to wreck your entire life from giving this a go. So after I read that, I was kind of relieved to say, okay, well, I'm giving myself the permission now to be brave and to do this for myself. And my husband was really supportive. He's not a reader, but he loves movies and he goes to film festivals a lot. And he's seen, the directors and writers that he looks up to. Some of them also took creative sabbaticals to work on projects. And one particular person that he admires, he told a story about his wife giving him 2 years to make something of his work. And now it worked out for him. He's now massively successful. And he thought, well, if it worked for so-and-so, right, we can do this for us. And so he's like, I'll give you a year to, do whatever you need to do to feel right with yourself. And then, after that year ended and I said that I wanted to continue doing this, then we just sort of checked in with each other and set income goals. And, that way he knows that I'm doing real work, right? Whether it's marketing or it's writing. But I'm also not leaving him out to dry, right? That I'm being involved with the household, and he feels comfortable knowing that, we can still maintain a lifestyle that we're used to. And nothing's going to rock the boat too much. And so it's constantly checking in with everyone financially, emotionally, to see like, hey, how are we feeling about this? This is still the right decision? And if circumstances had changed, right? Let's say, he lost his job. I always said, like, I'd get on LinkedIn immediately, right? I'd go and, get us more stable job, because if I need to do that for the household, that's what's important. And so my advice is like, it's not necessarily a black and white. I'm either 1099 or I'm W-2, right? You can come and go in phases. I don't have children, but there are a lot of women who, take some time off, raise some children, need flexible part-time work in the meantime, and then they go back and re-enter the workforce. And so you can come in and out of freelancing for a variety of reasons, and it doesn't have to be super like cut and stark and like neither shall these paths shall meet, right? Work can be what we make it.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that, because obviously talk a lot about seasons,
Mhm.
I'm a little older than you in a different season. And I think it's really important to realize that I think, I don't know, I'm sure I still do it too, but I think particularly when we're younger, we think everything is so finite, right? All decisions are finite, and rarely are decisions finite, and that we can always, do a U-turn, or go left instead of right when we really thought that going to the right was, and all of those things. And granted, obviously you want to be very intentional, and you want to be, not super impulsive, and make sure that you are, checking the financial and emotional boxes before you change your path. However, there's usually an opportunity to, go in even a different direction, or in the opposite direction, should we want
Mhm.
to. And I think I'm mixing way too many metaphors. but but the idea, right, is that, we make the best choice for now, right? Again, being
Yeah.
intentional, like you and your, like you did, like your conversations with your husband. What are our most important goals? Can we still accomplish them with this new path? And if so, let's give it a whirl. And then, like you said, if it's still working, great. If
Yeah.
it's not, let's, pivot. We all became very expert pivoters during the pandemic, and I think it's important actually to keep that skill,
Mhm.
as we're going.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, we all had plans in February of 2020, right? And so life doesn't necessarily care about them. And so if you're not staying flexible, freelancing is going to not necessarily be the right path for you, because you have to kind of roll with the punches. But life is also the same way. So it's actually a good analogy, that you have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And as someone with a lot of anxiety, that has been both liberating and terrifying. And I think it's actually been good for me, to be a freelancer, because it acclimates me to just a little bit of stress, but it's not this overbearing sense of doom that I was having when I was overworked in house, because at that point, I was in back-to-back meetings, hours upon hours a day. I would eat dinner and then I'd be back on my laptop. Like I never felt like I could catch a breath. And even now, today, with a more flexible schedule, I find myself feeling guilty sometimes, like, going to the gym on a Friday afternoon, because I can, or running errands, or doing something for my husband because he's got his job. It's helped the whole household stay more flexible. And I'm trying to say, like, that's important, right? I think we all forget that capitalism, patriarchy was designed for a high earner, usually a man, and someone else to really manage a household. And when women have interest, fantastic, by the way. It means that the structures are have to change, right? We have our own careers, we have our own creative pursuits, like our lives matter. And the world was not built for, women's lives to matter. And so when it comes to a lot of things, a lot of businesses close at 5, right? Who's going to that business if you both work full time? And so sometimes flexibility is what's required, in order for everyone to not go insane.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that not going insane should really be a top priority without question. Oh my goodness. So let's talk about how you are a successful freelancer and are still able to, write your novels. What are some of the ways that you stay organized? I know you've got some fun tools to share, all the good, all the goodies.
Yeah. Well, the very first thing that, like, the very first line of attack is understanding how long it takes you to do something. And so luckily I had a lot of background on this. I ran content marketing teams. I had done a lot of this content myself. So I knew approximately, like, how long a blog post takes versus a white paper versus a case study. And I knew how much I would pay for them as a manager, because I hired freelancers when I was in house. And so I knew what the standard going rates were in my industry. And so I had a good background on how this work is even done. And so that allowed me to set my prices accordingly, right? So I wouldn't be taken advantage of. And also know approximately how long it would take me to do something. So I would know, my pricing is relatively modular. I usually tell clients, one white paper is the equivalent to like 2 case studies or 3 blog posts. And so if they're on a retainer for a certain number of hours, I kind of can tell them like, this is about how much I can do in a month for you. And so we're all on the same page. And I always try to buffer, like put in quite a bit of buffer, which is basically freelancer margin, right? I'm charging more with the intent that it will take me less time to do something than I say it's going to do, because things come up, like revisions happen, things kind of get off the rails. And so, and I'm also guarding my time so I can protect my other clients. So I would say, yeah, know exactly what people are making in your industry doing what you do. Make sure you understand what you're like, even if you're not billing by the hour, know exactly how long, like how many hours it takes to do a project. And then track that time. So I use a tool called Toggle. That's Toggl. It's free. And you can use it to put in your clients, and it can track billable hours versus non-billable hours. And you can get reports that tell you how long you've spent on something. So I do that in my accounting because then I understand what my true hourly wage is. And I can figure out whether, whether it's a right fit for me. Or if I need to sort of increase my prices, or if I need to sort of give myself more time to do something. And so Toggle's been absolutely crucial for me. And then usually I know that I'm going to do about, let's say like 1 client per day. So if I'm writing and I know I want to have the bulk of my week doing that, well, I really only want to work, let's say like 3 of the 7 days on client work. So that means I can have 3 clients, and I have to have enough, I have to make enough off those clients that I can pay my bills and do whatever I need to do. And so that's kind of how I structured it, right? I rather take higher contracts with fewer clients, so that way it's more sustainable work, and I'm not overcrowding my calendar. So I have time to write or edit or do Instagram or promotion for my books, things of that nature. So I wouldn't necessarily, I have any days like off, but I have flexibility to come and go and do work as needed, because I built that buffer in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for the tip about Toggle as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked about the modular pricing. I just want to just sort of underline that a little bit, because that, just feels very logical and wonderful, right? It's like, okay, this is a longer thing, so it's worth, 3 of these
Mm-hmm.
smaller things, or this is a medium-sized thing. And, and I think that's probably, first of all, easier for you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then second of all, also helps your clients as well, sort of get a feel for, okay, all things are not created equal, for one thing,
Yeah.
and that there, are different levels of effort in response to these particular different work products. So I
Yep.
really like that. And then you're also, you also have, different pricing levels, correct? As I recall,
Mm-hmm.
I remember you had
Yeah.
a blog post about pricing, which is one of the most difficult things for freelancers. So I know you shared, one tip, but is there anything else that you would encourage people to think about to manage their pricing structure, or create it, or anything related to that? Because I know that is a little bit, the work sometimes is the easy part, right?
Yeah, I agree. And, it really goes to show that market research is going to be your friend here, because I do content marketing services, and I know that that's a very easy thing to outsource, right? To bring on someone to do extra writing or extra projects for a company is very common, right? Because a lot of these people aren't necessarily have the time and bandwidth to do this in house. But there are other functions that are not easy to freelance. Like for example, I'm thinking cybersecurity. That you may be like a government contractor and you may offer your services accordingly, but a lot of folks are going to want that person to have allegiances to only one company and to have full-time responsibility over their systems. And so what kind of work are you good at? Is the market willing to pay for that, and how much are they willing to pay? And different industries are going to be different, obviously. So for example, I obviously I'm in the publishing industry as an author, but I don't consult for the publishing industry because they pay peanuts, right? And so I work in the tech industry because the money is there, and I can charge $1 or more a word because that's something that they're used to. I also have extensive knowledge in that industry, so it makes sense that I would know what kind of work they need to get done, and I understand their businesses and how they're built and how they're structured and how they make money, right? And so for that, I would always say, do your research on both the market and your function. And then do not be afraid to narrow your audience, right? I have a lot of people have sticker shock when they see my pricing sheet. And they say, we can get copywriters for a lot less. And I say, yeah, that's great. I'm not a copywriter. I'm an executive level marketing strategist that specializes in content marketing, and I price accordingly. So if you want someone to just regurgitate ad copy at you, that's great. But also ChatGPT can do that now. And I want to up level my skills to provide something that a robot can't, which is something that everybody should be concerned about as a freelancer. And so in that case, it's setting expectations that I usually tell my clients, I do thinking time and I do doing time, right? A lot of people only want to pay for the doing time. They want to pay someone cheap just to do the work, right? But a lot of my companies are very early in their founding. They may not have any marketers in-house. And so they're also paying for thinking time, which is I want an expert who knows how to do this, who can get me started, who has a lot of experience. And in that case, you're paying for my experience. And so, I can charge, 250 an hour because I'm going to get it done in a lot faster time than someone who doesn't necessarily have that skill set. And so I would say as a freelancer, I don't think it would be possible for me to have built this freelance career had I not had an extensive career in-house. Because I have the background, I have the expertise, I have the network, right? I have not had to advertise my services because every single client I've worked with has been a referral in some way. And I would not have that referral system had I not built an excellent reputation with the companies that hired me. Mm-hmm. And so again, a huge amount of privilege to be able to do that. But, it's okay to like pound the pavement, climb that corporate ladder, get to a place where people respect you and they know what you're good at. And when they, I've got colleagues now that when they think content marketing, they think Alyssa, and so they hire me. Mm-hmm. And so personal brand is extremely important. And so I would say, yeah, like maybe do an audit. What are you good at? How much is someone willing to pay for that? And how can you talk to other freelancers in your space and lean on them for tips and tricks to, get your contract set up and, figure out what your invoicing looks like and the tools that you might need. And then it becomes a logistical conversation, which is a lot easier to tackle.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So what are some of your other favorite tips and tools that help you be a successful, productive freelancer?
Well, the other tool that I can't say enough good things about is Asana. I know everyone has their own favorite project management system. I love Asana specifically because it has flexibility. You can do Kanban boards, you can do calendars, you can do lists, and the UI is pretty intuitive for me. I've used it at certain companies. And so I maintain a running to-do list, and I usually bracket it out by this week, and then my to-do list. Next week, to-do list. And then this month, to-do list, this quarter to-do list, right? And so I'm constantly shifting things up the Asana, because that means like I can feel the sense of accomplishment of checking something off. But then I also know about how much I can do in a week or a month or a quarter. And so I don't try to bite off more than I can chew. And then I also maintain different projects in Asana for my clients. So I will invite them in. I'll make a Kanban board. I'll have like, here are the things that haven't been started. Here are the things that are in progress. Here are the things that are now in their court and they need to review. So it's pending review. And then finally, we move to completion. So it gives them the visibility that they know what I'm doing at any given time. And they can be reassured that I'm being responsible with my time. And then I also, another good tip is I drop in some reference information in that project for them. So I always have a card that has their contract tagged. So if they're ever, concerned about the terms of the contract or how many revisions they get on that piece of content, they can reference it. And then I also have a column for the PTO that I'm taking. So, nobody gives you vacation when you're a freelancer. You just have to take it. And you have to tell your clients, I'm not going to be around these days. And so I usually have like a section for PTO or holidays to say, hey, these are the days that I'm not going to be available. I'm going to set my out of office on my email, autoresponder. And so they know when they can get a hold of me and I can set some boundaries. I would say another thing that is important for folks to know that may not know because if they haven't hired freelancers, they may not be aware. But for example, in California, we have gig economy laws that have been put on the books on how contractors can facilitate with companies. And so you can look them up for your particular state, but you want to look up employment law and contractor law because they allow you to make sure that you are not getting taken advantage of and exploited by a company. So I usually will be upfront with a client and say, like, I'm not going to be in all of your corporate systems because I don't want you to get in trouble if you were audited and they look at me and say, wow, this person, is this an employee? She should be. I want to make sure those lines are very clear. So I usually prefer to be contacted via email rather than in someone's Slack, for example, because I'm not an employee. We kind of need to make sure those lines are set. For your mental health and make sure that they're not constantly pinging you, but also for them, it's important that they treat 1099 people differently. And in that case, I become more like a business partner rather than an employee. And that's very good for both. So, I would say that's something to keep in mind. How can you make sure that you're keeping your boundaries up, but also making sure they know what they are and can reference them accordingly?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you talked about how, most of your clients have been referrals and different things like that. Do you have a ideal client profile? Are there certain things that you look for in clients? Maybe share a little bit about that piece.
Yeah, so most of my experience has been with smaller startups. And so I know that a big giant tech company may not feel that my services are as valuable. And so I usually am working with smaller to mid-sized businesses. When it comes to, they either don't have marketing or they're just, the function is relatively new. Or they may have a more established marketing team, but they need to outsource the content, right? They just need someone to keep the fort, protected and going. And so that's the kind of type of company that I work with. And then I kind of divide the kind of work that I want to do, right? When I'm a writer, I can write pretty much anything, but there are things that I'm better at. And so I usually have a list of the types of pieces of content that I offer, both on like the strategy side and the execution side. So usually what I'm doing is I'm coming in with a package and I say, okay, we're going to do some marketing strategy. First and foremost, let's get a messaging framework going. Let's build a corporate narrative. And those are usually pretty essential documents for a company. And so once we get that done, then I understand, exactly how their business works. And then we can do, things like white papers, blog posts, etc. And so, yeah, I don't sell to everybody. I think a lot of people kind of get that scarcity mindset and they say, well, I got to make money, like whatever you'll give me. Right. And that's a really great way to burn yourself out. So again, if I'm shooting for, X income a year, and I only want to take on a certain select number of clients, right, I need to have contracts that are going to reflect accordingly. And I've noticed that the less someone argues with you during your contract, the more, amenable they're going to be as a client. So if you get a lot of nickel and diming, and a lot of hesitation, don't be afraid to walk away from that potential client. I've been in situations where I have to say, like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm actually not going to be able to drop my prices that low, but best of luck. And then usually they come around a few months later saying, oh yeah, we tried some copywriters, some cheaper copywriters, they didn't work out. Can we work together? And sometimes I get the very, smug moment of, well, my schedule's fully booked now, but, I appreciate it. Thanks for thinking of me. And then, again, you get what you pay for in my industry. And so I'm usually not I don't feel bad about, really setting my prices, to that standard, because eventually companies learn, and once they like someone, they want to work with someone, they're not going to go shopping, right? They just want to send things to you, and you become a trusted partner that they can rely on. And that's great when you can build long-term relationships with your clients.
Absolutely. And I really want all of our listeners to hear sort of that underlying message that there's going to be a segment of the world that is a much better fit for you from a client perspective, right? You talked very openly about how, there are certain types of companies that are going to value you more, understand the value of your services more than other types of companies. And so focusing on those and not worrying about the others really is a very significant recipe for success. I agree with you. When we try to be all things to all people, everything gets fuzzy and muddy and frustrated, and frankly, no one is happy, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Figuring out who it is that, who is going to be the best target for you and what you're good at, and really, really focusing on them. And then, like you said, holding your ground. I have, in my freelance life, I have found that is very true, that the more challenging the initial conversations are, the more challenging the work is throughout the whole process. So that's
yeah, you're kind of protecting yourself. And I would say, like, don't make assumptions necessarily. Like, again, I work with companies with 10 employees, 30 employees, and you may think, oh, they don't have the money to spend on something like that. Well, in the tech industry, it's very common for these companies to be funded by venture capital. So maybe they have an influx of cash and they just raised, $20 million. And so they've got the money to blow. And in that case, it's not necessarily about the size of the business. It's, are they ready to grow? Do they have the funding, and do they value what I do? As a marketer, that is unfortunate in my industry, where the work that we do is considered something that isn't as valuable as sales or engineering or something more technical or more revenue focused. But marketing is essential to generating revenue. And it's something that a lot of people think they can do well. And turns out, no, it's a specialty like anything else. And so I do have to combat a lot of assumptions and expectations about my work. But as a freelancer, I have more power to A, turn down work from people that don't value what I do, and B, be treated like a business partner rather than a minion to do their bidding. And so something, if you need to reclaim some time and space and power in your life, freelancing can actually be really liberating for that.
Thank you for that. So any last thoughts or tips or things for folks either in the world of freelance that just kind of want to level up a little bit, or getting into it for the first time?
Yeah, I would say again, it's not black and white. You don't have to like dump your day job immediately. If you have time to, see if this is right for you, you can always maybe do a little consulting on the side. Again, always consult your employment contracts of whether stuff like that is possible for you. But I would say again, go through that practice with yourself, emotionally, financially. Take baby steps, right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing, and you can change your mind at any given points, right? Give it a try, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to learn from them, and you're going to grow, and it's going to be fine. It's going to work out, and cut yourself a lot of slack. I think most people are more knowledgeable and more competent than they give themselves credit for.
Without question. Without question. Oh my goodness. Well, Alyssa, thank you so much for sharing this, other part of your world, right? In addition to writing romance novels, being able to be a successful, freelance marketer, and all of the things that comes with that, right? There's this wonderful, freedom and flexibility and all of those wonderful things. And then, you do have that opportunity to exercise your flexibility and resilience muscles, right? And
Mhm.
so there's a lot to that. Any last things to share before we wrap up today?
No, I mean, I would always, if there are any tech companies listening for any reason, I am available for consulting. So if you're interested in working with me on content marketing, you can go to alyssajarrett.com.
Ah, fantastic. Thank you. I meant to do that, and I appreciate you giving us that information on how to contact you, which is great. Well, thank you again for your time today.
And thank you so much for having me, Betsy. It's always a blast.
Yay. And thank you, listeners, for spending time with us today to talk about the world of productive freelance and whether or not freelance is for you. And look forward to next time on Handled Ish.